Okay. Hello there, folks. How you doing? Don't know how many of you are able to join us yet. Let me go ahead and share this on Twitter and while we're starting out here. So we've got about 25, 30 minutes until Linda Kay starts her live. And then an hour after Linda's live starts, I have another live scheduled. So this ought to get interesting tonight. It ought to be a very interesting Friday night, folks. So here we go. We're going to try and finish up before Linda Kay starts, though, because we're classy and that's just the way we do it. So, but I'm going to get this shared on Twitter real quick while the Mad Scott dazzles you with some sort of havering or another, and then we'll get started.
Well, good evening, dude. What a nice introduction, as always. Yeah, we are just the starters. We are just a very light starter course. Something that I asked you about, and I don't know if other people were curious whilst watching, particularly the first two episodes of the Innocence Files. We hear plenty from Michael West, the odontologist, the bite mark specialist. Right. But of course, Michael West would not have achieved anything of his notoriety had it not been for his partner in crime, a certain Dr. Stephen Hayne. And yet we see nothing of this Dr. Hayne. We hardly see him mentioned. We certainly don't hear anything from him. And it just piqued my interest. I thought, now what's happening here? Well, of course, when I finally got my my book about particularly about Hayne, Bradley Belko goes into great detail. And so what you've got to hopefully show for us, you can screen share with us, would be a couple of articles that kind of explain why we didn't hear much from Stephen Hayne. But also, I think there's parallels certainly with the Andy Colburn and his lawsuit against Netflix.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's what was really interesting in the book, really interesting, is to see the hierarchy. You know, Michael West was at the bottom of the ladder. You know, he was doing his bizarre odontology. And by the way, that was the other thing that came out. You remember we read an article about he used to do strange thing with fluorescent light. He claimed that he and him and Dr. Stephen Hayne, they used to tout it all over Mississippi that he could actually through this light, fluorescent light, he learned this ancient technique from China from 3,000 years ago, whereby he could identify even slight marks in people's skin which weren't visible. You know, so for example, if somebody had held a screwdriver, on one example, somebody had held a screwdriver, and several days later, he was able to then, do this fluorescent light on somebody's hand, and it would show the imprint of where the screwdriver had been. I'm kind of simplifying it, you know, but he was the only person that could see that because he'd developed this unique technique called, believe it or not, the West phenomenon.
He even called it a phenomenon.
He called it the West phenomenon. And they went round, him and Hayne, touting it to every single law enforcement in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it? Oh, you can't do this, but check it out. Yeah, oh, God.
Well, the thing is that you had Stephen Hayne doing 80% of the autopsies in Mississippi. Not just in one county, in Mississippi.
Yeah.
He was, and again, of course, it's interesting. Just about everything that we've ever looked at is mentioned in this book. Like, for example, the Annie Ducum and the dry labbing.
Yeah.
For this guy to be doing in excess of 1,500 autopsies a year.
Yeah.
He was definitely not very thorough in his in his work.
There was something. Was it actually in the Innocence Files where they were talking about? or was it a different thing I was watching? But they were talking about a number of times they were looking at like medical reports he had created during an autopsy or whatever, and like he's got in a male gentleman's report, he's like reporting the weight of ovaries, and things like that, like and it's like, oh, dude, were you getting a bit confused? You know, was your caseload a bit too much?
That's right. And in another example, he'd weighed the weight of the spleen. The only problem was that it had been removed 4 years earlier in an operation.
Right. There you go. Hi, Carl. Hi, Shari.
Which tends to show that, that he probably never even opened that particular body up, did he? Because the operation was also in conjunction with a funeral house.
Right.
Yeah. So they had the whole. They had the sort of corner of the market all sewn up, doing the autopsies, doing the bite mark analysis, and the West phenomenon, and all sorts of other stuff. And of course, what you discover is that the law enforcement, the sheriff's officers, and the attorneys, they absolutely love Hayne and West because they will give opinions that will convict.
Right.
And that's what it was all about. It was at one point, we have no records of Hayne's income, but it easily estimated at being some years nearly $2 million a year.
I'm sure there's no records of Mike West either, because I'm sure they were paying him in Miller High Life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
To keep it off the books.
Yeah. do you want to share that article, or do you want me to? Have you got it there?
I can.
You can. Okay. So for once, I'm on the coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just plain ordinary coffee.
Yeah. It's because you'll be sleeping in the doghouse if you drink any more whiskey.
Again.
All right. So here we go. Former pathologist sues the Innocence Project. Former Mississippi medical examiner Stephen Hayne is suing the Innocence Project for defamation in a suit filed October 28th with the Rankin County Circuit Court. Hayne claimed that the New York-based nonprofit organization damaged his reputation and cost him income with press releases and letters calling for the revocation of his medical license. The defendants owed a duty to Dr. Hayne to conduct a reasonable and unbiased investigation into the true facts prior to publishing the allegations that they have made against Dr. Hayne. Hayne's complaint said the defendants breached this duty by publishing, both orally and in writing, numerous false, misleading, and inaccurate allegations against Dr. Hayne. In April of 2008, the Innocence Project sent a letter of complaint to the Mississippi State Board of Medical Licensure, detailing instances of what it alleged was Dr. Hayne's unprofessional conduct. Hayne's testimony weighed heavily in the original murder convictions of Levon Brooks and Kennedy Brewer, who you guys will know from the Innocence Files. Two Mississippi men and Innocence Project clients who were exonerated in February thanks to DNA evidence at both Brooks and Brewer's trials. The Innocence Project charged Hayne provided misleading testimony based on evidence that he inaccurately classified as human bite marks. The licensure board, while expressing concern at Hayne's workload, did not subject Hayne to any disciplinary action. In the absence of an official state medical examiner, a position unfilled in Mississippi since 1995, Hayne performed the bulk of the state's autopsies. Hayne has stated under oath that he performed 1,500 autopsies a year, 6 times the maximum recommended by the National Association of Medical Examiners. 6 times. Let's see here. In August, Public Safety Commissioner Steve Simpson announced that Hayne would be removed from the state's list of approved medical examiners and that the state would hire a full-time medical examiner within 6 months. At the time, Simpson said that Hayne had a backlog of 400 to 500 autopsy reports that he needed to complete before his contract expired. Simpson added that Hayne had provided a tremendous service under very, very difficult circumstances. Only because you overloaded him. I mean, who are we going to blame here? Do we blame the state of Mississippi for overloading Hayne? Do we blame Hayne for not telling them, look, you're trying to make me do too much. You need to bring in a second person. Because
Hayne was quite happy.
Exactly, because he wanted the money. It was all about money.
Oh yeah.
Right.
An average of 4 a day.
Yeah. So it's too much, and the state executive, officials should have been, red flagging this and pulling back on this. And here we have this guy saying, provided a tremendous service under very difficult circumstances. The only reason the circumstances were difficult is because you guys were insisting on doing it the wrong way so that Hayne could make more money. That's the only reason why the circumstances were difficult.
But do you not think that Brad Schimmel was very impressed with the work of Ken Kratz? Do you not think Peg Lankenschlager was very impressed with the work of Ken Kratz?
Yeah,
it's look at the people at the top. They're the ones that are helping these guys be so corrupt.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, there's not enough control, or there's not enough. Well, basically, we need people to get to taking an interest in this stuff more than they kind of do. All right. This is the second article. How much time we got before Linda goes? Okay, 12 minutes. All right, I think we got just enough time. All right, here we go. Dr. Stephen Hayne, once the state's most active forensic expert, has a reputation of being both something of a Svengali and an expert criminal witness. Hayne recently agreed to a $100,000 out-of-court settlement from the New York-based judicial advocacy group, the Innocence Project. Hayne filed a defamation of character suit against the group in April of 2009 in U.S. District Court in Jackson. Although the defendants settled out of court, the Innocence Project claims with affirmative assertion it did nothing wrong and settled for insurance purposes. We are pleased that the lawsuit brought against us by Stephen Hayne has come to an end, the Innocence Project co-director Peter Neufeld said in a statement. While we would have preferred not to have had to waste our resources defending against a frivolous lawsuit, we were able to learn a lot through the lawsuit about forensic science in Mississippi over the past decades. Information that will be extremely helpful to lawyers challenging other convictions in Mississippi, including cases where Dr. Hayne was a prosecution's witness. The Innocence Project remains steadfast in its goal to uncover improper convictions and reform the criminal justice system, particularly in death penalty cases. Hayne's suit claims the Innocence Project acted in gross negligence by sending a 14-page complaint letter to the Mississippi State Board of Licensure. Well, what are you supposed to do if you have a concern about somebody? Don't you write a letter of complaint to the governing body that would be governing that person? I mean, isn't that just... How could you sue for that? I can't believe this ever got past step one. Mm-hmm. Anyways, all right, fine. All right, moving on. In the letter, the Innocence Project stated Hayne routinely engages in unprofessional conduct under Mississippi Code 73-25-29 and Chapter 22-500, and is unqualified to practice as defined in Mississippi Code. Dr. Hayne, by providing false and misleading autopsy reports and testimony in criminal prosecutions which carry a death sentence, has played a critical role in improperly sending an unknown number of people to death row or prison for life. Our own investigation was prompted by discovering that he had testified under oath falsely in 2 capital cases. After an investigation into the state's by the state's medical board, Hayne was removed from the state's designated pathologist list, which I think was a good idea.
Yes. well, yeah. People higher up the food chain were not happy about that at all, and they tried to get him back in.
Yeah, I'll bet. The two capital cases referenced in the letter occurred in the 16th District Circuit Court and were prosecuted through the Office of District Attorney Forrest Allgood.
Right.
Yeah. These are the two cases from the Innocence files, folks. Lavon Brooks and Kennedy Brewer.
Yep.
Both Tyler, and this gentleman, Tyler Edmonds, both Tyler Edmonds and Kennedy Brewer were sentenced to prison before their convictions were overturned. Hayne provided expert testimony in the trial that sent Brewer to prison for murder in 1995. A decade later, DNA proved Brewer's innocence, and he was acquitted of murder. Mm-hmm. Allgood's association with Hayne was the subject of a 2011 article by Radley Balco for Reason Online. In the article entitled "Bad Boys: A Rogue Gallery of Misbehaving Prosecutors plus 3 Worth Praising," Balco refers to Allgood as the death row gambler.
Yep.
That's an interesting moniker. I kind of want to hear more about how he arrived at that name. But anyway, a little later maybe. We gotta get out of here before Linda goes on. So another video.
Oh yes,
we'll get to it.
In
part for his association with Hayne. On Tuesday, Allgood stood behind his decisions to use Hayne and said that he had not cost him any convictions. I can think of 2. Anyway, Edmonds was 13 at the time of the shooting death of his brother-in-law, Joey Fulgham. He initially confessed to the crime, then changed his story and claimed Christy Fulgham did it and convinced him to take the blame for her. Hayne testified that he could determine that 2 people pulled the trigger on the gun that killed Joe Fulgham through his examination of where the bullet was placed. Right. Yes. Okay. Right. Edmonds was convicted of murder in 2004 and spent several years incarcerated before the Mississippi Supreme Court discarded Hayne's testimony and overturned the conviction. Edmonds was granted a new trial. He was acquitted by a jury in 2008 and remains free. When asked his thoughts about Hayne, the normally outspoken Edmonds paused and carefully picked his words. And these are the words you guys saw in the thumbnail before this video started. I think people should let Dr. Hayne's qualifications, or lack thereof, speak for themselves, Edmonds said. And that's brilliant. And you know why Edmonds said it that way, folks, right? Because by saying it that way, he's avoiding Hayne trying to slap a defamation lawsuit on him. Yeah. So yeah, that's how that goes. So yeah.
Can you remember? Yeah, can you remember in one of the episodes of the Innocence File, Chris Fabricant goes to that convention where you've got all these people trying to present their new techniques for discovery stuff. You know, like all the various. Some of it's quite good, but some of it's pretty bogus. But they're there to try and tout the business, to try and get law enforcement to use them as their specialist witness, right? So this guy Haynes, there's a board of American pathologists, right? And there's an exam you have to pass, and he failed the exam. So he was not even certified to be he was not certified by the board of American pathologists. But there was this other guy that set up this other American board of pathologists, so he could say that and for all you did was you just sent money in, and they gave you the certification. We see Michael West showing off his certificates that he'd got.
Right.
Well, this is when it gets really bizarre. So eventually, in 2011, the Supreme Court in Mississippi actually described Hayne as being discredited, because of all his shenanigans. But in one of the cases where AEDPA was the main problem, the third hurdle in AEDPA is that if you want to bring new evidence in, it has to be done within a year.
Mm-hmm.
So in this one case, you've got the defendant. I think his name was Flass. Flags. I'll look it up again. And he was trying to say, look, this Hayne, you have to let me off because this Hayne, he's been discredited. But the Supreme Court, or at least quoting AEDPA, said, oh no, we first heard about him and his dodgy dealings in 2007. So you're like 12 years too late, or sorry, you're 5 years too late.
Yeah.
And it's just there's a whole list of things that Radley goes through that as I say, the people at the top were quite happy to keep him there because he was securing convictions, and since he's been discredited, nobody's been able to go along and say, look, you need to let me off because of the fact that your expert was not the expert he said he was.
Right.
It's only through the stuff like Kennedy Brewer and Lavon Brooks that they're getting out through DNA evidence.
Right. And we're seeing these clear problems. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, the other thing I was going to finish up by pointing out was, of course, that in Manitowoc, of course, you've got Netflix, you've got Andy Colburn. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest that because the case is this defamation by Andy Colburn is being brought up in Wisconsin, if Netflix don't just settle out of court and say, look, here's some money just to go away, but we'll have the advantage of your depositions.
Right.
And I thought that was very interesting, the way that the Innocence Project, well, I think Peter Neufeld in particular, in that article, says we have benefit.
We gathered a lot of information, about how this guy operated. And so now we'll be able to pass that along to other defense attorneys when they're trying to unravel some of his shoddy work.
Yep.
So, brilliant.
Anyway, I'm going to go and have a quick tour around Utah. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, right on, buddy. Okay. All right, folks, head on over to Linda's channel. I got the notification about 28 minutes ago. She's got a live head in there, another one about Brendan. Everybody head over there, and I'll see you there. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and then...
Also, tomorrow, I've got Dr. Silkman, but it's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, which your time is going to be about 3 in the morning.
No, not 3.
No, not 3 in the morning.
Like 9 o'clock or 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., I think.
No, I'm 8 hours ahead of you.
Well,
5.
That'd be 5.
Okay. 5 in the morning. So 7 o'clock in the morning Central Time. So bet when you wake up, you'll be able to listen to myself and Dr. Silkman.
Right, absolutely. I may even ask you for a link if I manage to get up soon enough, maybe.
Oh well, yeah.
But anyway,
yeah, absolutely, yep.
All right, okay, cheers. Everybody.
Catch you later
over at Linda's. Oh, remember, folks, I will be live again in an hour.
Yes.
So, Linda's going to be starting here in a minute, but in an hour from now, I will be starting up my live. It's going to be my weekend review. For those of you that are interested, I'll see you there. Anyways, all right, folks, the song dance. We'll see you in a bit.
Bye for now.